Have you ever stopped to think about how one tiny mistake, a single wrong turn, or a simple no can change, well, everything? In this explainer, we're diving into some of history's biggest blunders, moments where a small error triggered a massive, world-altering chain reaction.
It's just a fundamental truth about us. We all mess up. It's part of the human condition, from the moment we're born to our very last day.
But what happens when that oops moment has a price tag? And I'm not talking about a few bucks. I'm talking about billions of dollars. Or, even heavier, a cost that's measured in human lives. Let's start with a few that just costs an absolute fortune.
So our first stop is a category of mistakes that are almost painful to think about. These are the moments when a single word, no, turned out to be the most expensive word anyone could have possibly uttered.
Just look at that number, 12. Imagine being one of those 12 publishing houses. One after another, they all got the manuscript for Harry Potter from some unknown author, J.K. Rowling, and they all said, nah, not for us. They passed on what would become one of the biggest cultural phenomenons of our lifetime.
So, what was different about publisher number 13, a little company called Bloomsbury? Well, you're not going to believe this. An employee took the book home for the weekend, and his 8-year-old daughter absolutely devoured it. And that's when he realized what everyone else had missed. They were adults judging a children's book. He went back and fought for it, and that one bet, it created an entire multi-billion-dollar industry.
Now let's jump over to the tech world, where a couple of no thank yous became legendary blunders. Back in 1999, the founders of Google offered to sell their little search engine to a company called Excite for just $750,000. Excite said no. Fast forward 3 years, Yahoo comes knocking with an offer of $1 billion. Google says, how about 3? Yahoo walks.
And this right here, this shows you the staggering cost of that second no. For the price of $3 billion, Yahoo could have owned the future. Instead, they let it slip through their fingers. And today, Google's parent company is worth trillions, while Yahoo is, well, you can see the difference. Ouch.
All right, so we've seen missed opportunities. But what about mistakes that weren't about saying no, but were just colossal planning failures? The kind of thing where a simple double check could have saved a fortune?
Okay, let's rewind to the late 1950s. Ford Motor Company decided they were going to build the car of the future. They poured what would be $2 billion in today's money into this top-secret project, and they named it after Henry Ford's son, the Edsel. There was just one tiny problem. It was a complete and utter flop. The public hated everything about it. The weird name, the bizarre grille, the whole car. After all that hype and all that money, Ford had to kill the entire project. It's now the textbook example of a product launch gone wrong. And if you think that was a big oops, get a load of this one. In 2014, the French National Railway spent $15 billion on a beautiful new fleet of trains. The trains arrive, everyone's excited, and then they realize they're too wide to fit the platforms at hundreds of stations. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. The media, of course, had an absolute field day, and this quote pretty much sums up the absurdity of it all. It was this massive, unbelievably expensive, and frankly, deeply embarrassing mistake that cost tens of millions more just to shave down the concrete on all those platforms.
Okay, so the mistakes we've talked about so far have been costly, for sure, but their consequences were mostly financial. We're going to shift gears now, because the next set of errors we're going to look at, their price was paid in human lives. This was the Piper Alpha. It was a huge oil and gas platform way out in the brutal North Sea. And in July of 1988, it was just another day of routine maintenance, with crews working on the platform's complex system of pumps and safety valves. But then, a simple, tragic breakdown in communication happened during a shift change. A worker, who had no idea a crucial safety valve had been removed for service, switched on a gas pump. The resulting explosion turned the rig into a massive inferno. Of the 226 men on board that night, 167 of them died. And beyond that absolutely horrific human cost, the platform was a total loss, resulting in what was then the world's most expensive man-made disaster. The financial hit was over £5 billion, all from one moment of miscommunication.
Sometimes, a single act by a single person can ignite something far, far bigger than a local disaster. It can set the entire world on fire. That's exactly what happened in 1914, when a young nationalist named Gavrilo Princip
fired a pistol at the car carrying Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
And that one act started a terrifying chain reaction. It was the spark. A web of treaties and alliances kicked in, and like a line of dominoes, one nation after another was pulled into what would become the First World War. A single assassination plunged the world into a conflict that claimed tens of millions of lives.
And that brings us to our final story, the one that really sits at the apex of error. A mistake so profound that it combined unimaginable financial cost, a tragic loss of life, and left a permanent, invisible scar on our planet.
On April 26, 1986, a deeply flawed reactor design, combined with a poorly trained crew, led to a catastrophic explosion at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The first report out of the Soviet Union was a lie. They claimed it was a minor incident, just 2 fatalities. But the truth was a nuclear core was on fire, spewing a radioactive cloud that would drift across an entire continent.
The consequences were apocalyptic. The heroic first responders who rushed in died agonizing deaths from radiation poisoning. The nearby city of Pripyat, home to 50,000 people, became a ghost town, evacuated forever. The exclusion zone around the plant will be uninhabitable for an estimated 20,000 years. The financial cost topped $750 billion, and many historians say the political fallout from the disaster helped bring down the entire Soviet Union.
So when you look back at all of this, from a rejected book to a faulty switch to a single gunshot, it's just staggering to see how fragile things are, how one tiny error can completely reshape our world. And it leaves us with this one final, really unsettling question. What historic mistakes are we making right now, the true cost of which we won't even begin to understand for generations to come?